name is Nick Eads. I'm the CMO at Psion PLC. Most people remember Psion for their organizer products of the late 80s and early 90s. We don't make those anymore. We make industrial grade PDAs, and we run infrastructure, logistics infrastructure for a lot of the world's airports, most of the world's ports, some very big name car companies and so on. So we're a sort of deep B2B infrastructure company, and as such we've repositioned the company accordingly. I came here through time in the telecoms world with BT, Nortel and Avaya. Prior to that in the technology world with Dell, where I was marketing director for about 4 years, 5 years in total with Dell, and then a long spell with IBM where I kind of started to learn the craft of marketing. I was brand manager for IBM's ThinkPad product and lived and worked inside the big IBM brand for many years, and it was a great experience. I still think that a lot of companies, and I can only speak really from the B2B side here, are still very nervous about social media and not quite sure what to do with it. So social is really important to us as this glue, and we created our own online community. We call it ingenuityworking.com, and it's turned out to be pretty substantial. It's probably the biggest online community in our industry, with something like 70, 80,000 visitors a month. We have 8,000, 9,000 live discussions at any one time. And therefore, social for us is critical because we have to know what people think of us in the social sphere. So we have tracking tools to find people who should be in our conversations and bring them into our community. We also track us and what people think of us as a company and our products beyond our community to make sure we are listening at all times. And that is a very, very live, daily, minute by minute kind of behavior. And I think, we've adopted this policy of listen, manage, own in terms of social. So we have to be out there as a public company, looking after our investor interests as well as our employee and company and partner and customers. We have to be listening to anything anybody says about the word Psion or any of our products. And that can be quite a challenge at times. And then we try and bring those into our own sphere through this positive, proactive approach towards managing that dialogue to make sure we catch stuff on Twitter, we catch stuff in LinkedIn, in Facebook, whatever, and bring it into our own community where we can handle it with experts. And we find that we have experts in the company and experts outside of the company that solve a lot of our problems or issues or handle parts of that dialogue before even we get to see it. So it's been a very, very proactive approach. I'm not sure how suitable that is for every company in the B2B space. It's something we felt we had to do, and we started it 2 years ago, and it's worked for us. I think it's still very true that B2B companies are nervous about what being in the social sphere can mean, but I think you have to at least have a listening policy and a managing activity. Whether or not you choose to own that dialogue, I think is down to how that company works, whether it's a direct company or an indirect company, or it's a deep developer, it's an infrastructure company at that sort of deep layer. It depends on your audience. B2B is complicated. It's complicated by region, geography, country, language, the decision maker unit, and how that's built up. It's not as easy as it sounds, and in a strange way, you have to get started into it to understand how easy it could be. And it's never that easy. It's just something you have to get your head around and get a process around. And I firmly believe that where we are with Listen, Manage, Own has worked for us really well, and I don't see any need to change that at this point in time. But we do have plans to grow our social infrastructure over the next year and a half, and that may mean that we evolve this slightly. The fact that we have a minimalistic approach to Facebook, because we're not interested in whether somebody likes or doesn't like our product, because there's no context. What we find in the community that we run in Ingenuity Working is that people give us that context. So they like it because it does X, or they don't like it because it doesn't do Y, is much more important from our perspective. Where I think other companies have got it right, and we have strong links through our platform provider to other community and socially driven companies, is particularly Dell's IdeaStorm. I like the way they kind of crowdsource, kind of own that conversation, and what they do in that space is important because they know that owning and managing that relationship with the customer, whether it's B2B or B2C, public sector, whatever niche they're addressing, it's better to see that conversation, have that conversation, understand that context, and then deal with how do you handle it as a company than a straightforward like or an unlike or any other kind of rather promotionally driven activity. Typically in B2B, there isn't the buy one, get one free approach. There isn't the free sample. There isn't that kind of impulse buy. You're dealing with corporations, their money. It's not money in the pocket. There's no pass to power. There's none of that subjectivity. It's a very objective, often lengthy decision. And that's why I think, whether it's Dell or even Texas Instruments do a great job at a very deep level in running their communities and their social media program, to pull in people from right around the world so they get the input and insight they need to develop the next generation of processor engines, for example. And I think insight is the most powerful thing that any company can get from social media, and I think in B2B it's that depth and context you have to have to really work out what the value is. We spend a lot of money, most, I guess, of my peer group spend a lot of money on research. Social is live research, but you've got to get the context, otherwise it's incredibly of the moment. And B2B isn't of the moment, it's of a long process. You've got a buy and sell cycle at 6-9 months each. You've got tenure with a customer, which is probably 3 to 5 years. There is no impulse buy in that process. So that whilst you're testing the water all the time, the water temperature may change from day to day or month to month. On an aggregate basis, you've got to be able to smooth that out and get the context.